I've got one question for the ranking member, Ranking Member Waters. In a 2008 hearing, you said, quote, "And guess what this liberal will be all about? This liberal will be all about socializing, would be about basically taking over the government and the government running all of your companies," end quote. Simple question, do you stand by that statement?
Simple answer. I am here today in this Rules Committee because we're taking up time with basically a non-issue.
Did you see that pause? That wasn't confusion. That was someone realizing the script just fell apart. What you're about to watch is Chip Roy doing what most politicians refuse to do, reading the words back, line by line, and forcing accountability in real time. This hearing was supposed to be routine. Instead, it turned into a spotlight. And when he brought up Maxine Waters and her own record, that's when the energy shifted. No grand speeches. No emotional distractions, just receipts. This isn't just political theater. It's a clash over how this country runs, capitalism, power, control, and whether anyone in Washington ever gets called out to their face. Watch closely. Because once the questioning starts, you'll see exactly why that silence hit so hard. Roll the clip.
We can go around and around in circles about trying to talk about and defining socialism, but at its core, I was intrigued by an op-ed that I saw not too long ago by a Democrat from Cuba commenting on one of our colleagues, an avowed socialist, and essentially pointing out the extent to which democratic socialism is a lot like the system my family fled, except its proponents promised to be nicer when seizing your business. And that's the truth. That's the truth here. And so we can talk about these terms as if they don't matter, but they do. They do matter. They're actually at the core of who we are. I've got one question for the ranking member, Ranking Member Waters. In a 2008 hearing, you said, quote, "And guess what this liberal will be all about? This liberal will be all about socializing, would be about basically taking over the government and the government running all of your companies," end quote. Simple question, do you stand by that statement?
Simple answer. I am here today in this Rules Committee because we're taking up time with basically a non-issue. First of all, you claim that socialism has engulfed this country, that it keeps creeping, it's going to take over private businesses, et cetera, et cetera. That is not happening. We're in a democracy that we're trying very much to save and to not have disrupted, undermined in the way that...
So then, reclaiming my time, the gentlelady denounces your previous statement then, and do not accept that previous statement that you think you would take over these private businesses?
I'm not a socialist. I'm a capitalist. And I commit to you that I am here to save Social Security, to save Medicare, to save seniors and veterans. And for some of you who have adopted certain kind of ways that you support what you now claim is socialism, I'm here to say to you, come on.
So this liberal will be all about socializing, will be all about basically taking over and the government running all of your companies. You disagree with that? You now denounce that statement?
I am not a socialist.
Okay.
All right?
So I appreciate the response. I think that to the extent that one has a concern as a member of this body or as an American watching this, one has concerns when we hear statements like this, and that's not the only one. And statements by some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle extolling the virtues of socialism, as I just pointed out. A nicer way of confiscating businesses, a nicer way of confiscating the assets and the means of production. When now, as I think the gentleman from Kentucky was alluding to, in 1929, federal spending was 3% of GDP. At the height of COVID, 31% of GDP. In FY22, we collected a record $4.9 trillion in revenue, but still had a $1.4 trillion deficit. I think one question I would ask the chairman of financial services, is do you have full control over the means of production if you're a company in this country, but yet the government is regulating you so much that you cannot actually carry out the use of the capital for the purpose for which you have the company created? In other words, for example, ESG requirements. For example, maybe it's some of the USDA regulations, requirements that prohibit small businesses from being able to crack into the monopolies that the gentlelady from New Mexico is referring to with respect to meat processing in this country. There are heavy USD regulations prohibiting that, as the gentleman from Kentucky has talked to, and I'm happy to yield to him in a minute if he would like.
Will the gentleman yield?
Well, I was directed, but if the gentlelady would like to speak, I'm not going to ask her not to.
Thank you. A lot of what we do in financial services have to do with regulations. A lot of what is attempted on my side of the aisle is to protect investors and protect people who take a chance, for example, on Wall Street investments, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's interesting to point out that for years, Wall Street preyed upon communities of color, offering predatory loans. Other banks then tried to swindle pension plans, and ultimately, there was nothing else to steal, and it all fell apart. It was this body that stepped in to rescue Americans. I'm proud of our efforts to rebuild our economy, to allow lawful businesses to prosper and Americans to succeed. So what I think is important is this. You allude to, and many Republicans allude to, businesses without credible regulation. Do whatever you want to do. Do it in whatever way you want to do it. On my side of the aisle, yes, I lead the arguments from time to time about how we have to have SEC as a cop on the block, about how we have to have the Consumer Financial Protection Agency in order to protect people who would be taken advantage of. And I think that if you're thinking about socialism as a government that should not be doing these things, that should not be stepping in to protect the average American, then I'm certainly not with that. And I don't think most Americans are with that. We are about those who want to be in business, to have the opportunity to invest their money, to save their money, to put it into businesses. But we're not about, you can do anything that you want to do. You can steal, you can undermine, you can do whatever it is to increase that
okay,
profit.
and if we can and explore, I was going to yield back, but I'm going to explore that for one more second, which is to say, you know, what gentlelady describes, I've not heard any member of this side of the aisle say that they think that there should be a unfettered, unbridled environment in which there aren't certain rules of the road, right? I mean, either at the end of the day, you either have corporations who can grind over the American people. I would suggest to you a great example of that is Pfizer and Moderna making $100 billion on the back of the environment right now today where there are government mandates with pharmaceutical companies with liability protections making hundreds of billions of dollars without any liability constraint. So now those corporations can grind out right over the American people with no chance to go to court to get regress for their grievances and no chance to get any real significant government help on the side of that for this whole debate about regulations or being able to go to court, right? Those are your options. Either the capitalistic system grinds over you or you get to go to court to go sue to protect your well-being, or you're going to have some sort of government regulation to provide some guardrails. And the fact here is we're doing exactly the wrong thing right now with government, corporate cronyism, and collusion with major pharmaceutical companies that are grinding right over the American people's ability to be able to take care of themselves. So I think that's actually a really important point. And the last point that I'd make was the gentleman from Colorado. Unfortunately, he's not here, so I hate to refer to him in the third person. He's not here, but had talked about that the first thing that was done, was it last year, was the what was the act? What's the thing called? Oh, the American Rescue Plan. It's hard to remember these fancy titles. Didn't rescue anything. The fact is, what we ended up with is now 1 in 4 U.S. parents are saying they've struggled to afford food or housing in the past year, an incredibly low labor force participation rate, inflation we haven't seen for 40 years, in significant part because the government acted and engaged yet again and interfered with the ability of the American people to drive their success. And that is at the heart of the actual cultural debate we're having right now about government versus who owns the actual means of production in the private sector. I'll yield to the gentleman from Kentucky.
Maxine Waters just called herself a capitalist. Wow, just wow. Listen closely, because this is brutal. Small businesses are drowning under endless regulations. And here's Maxine Waters, the queen of government control, looking Chip Roy in the eye and says, "I'm not a socialist, I'm a capitalist." A capitalist? Really? After decades of pushing bigger government, more spending, and Washington controlling your life? If that's capitalism, I'm the king of England. Chip Roy ripped through that lie. He said it straight. Ownership on paper means nothing if the government calls the shots. Taxes, hiring rules, production limits, inflation. If the government decides all that, they own your business, not you. That's cronyism, not freedom. That's exactly the opposite of what built this country. Waters tried her usual trick. I'm saving Social Security. I'm saving Medicare. Classic politician move. If you criticize them, suddenly you hate grandma. Pathetic. Roy didn't fall for it. He hammered the point. The government is running the economy, failing, and stealing your future. Printing money we don't have, crushing the poor with inflation, bankrupting the next generation, all while pretending everything is fine. This is what real confrontation looks like. No fluff. No excuses, just the truth. Freedom is under attack, and Roy called it out. If you want more hard-hitting truth like this, subscribe, like and share this video to others, because we will take back America one video at a time.